So I know what you're thinking. Like, how can you possibly top that? Well, I met Letitia at an event as I was there, and she was doing her auctioneer thing. She's got a book out called No Reserve, which I read and was just incredibly moved in a lot of different ways. One, how raw it is, how real, and how it really resonated with me. The first chapter, I was just, riveted in terms of the story really paralleled, my life and my world. So I'm just going to give you a little bio on Letitia Frye, who just really encompasses passion in every aspect of her work, whether teaching best practices in fundraising, auctioning items at galas, or volunteering with the very groups she is working to raise money for. Letitia believes that the secret to her success is passion from what she is doing at all times. Mrs. Frye is now a motivational speaker and publishing the author of the No Reserve. She epitomizes, and the reason that I had her close is she epitomizes the comeback story. Like, no matter what is going on in your life, no matter where you are, you can follow the steps and the leadership of what she is going to impart to us, and you can accomplish anything regardless of where you're at. So it's my pleasure to introduce Letitia Frye.
Thanks, Walter. I really appreciate it. Hey, everyone, and I have to say, as a personal note, Sharon Lechter is one of my icons and a friend and mentor, and that book, Outwitting the Devil, changed my life, so I highly recommend it. One of the things that I was very honored to wrap up with here today, and it's something I want to part with you, is exactly what we started with: women and money. It's not called Money and Women, it's called Women and Money. So let's talk about that, because I am the classic case of a woman who put everything into everyone else, everywhere else, except myself. And I paid dearly for that mistake. So let's start out with where I began, which is usually where people want to end up. See, it's exactly what Walter talked about. See, I started out with the $3 million house and the $125,000 country club and the idyllic marriage, at least to the public eye. But deep inside of me, there was always this pull, this voice that kept telling me I didn't belong there. See, ultimately, I was just trying to become something I thought my parents wanted me to become, maybe something I see on TV. But ultimately, I kept pushing parts of myself down. I also started to turn a blind eye to a lot of things that maybe in college, when you meet someone, like drinking, maybe the occasional cocaine. I mean, I'm going to pull it raw here today, and I'm going to tell you the truth. Because it's not going to help me to pretend to be something I'm not, so that you cannot be the person you're supposed to be. Because true value comes from within. And once you get to a place where you attain it, no amount of money thrown at it and no amount of money taken away from it can shake it. So I'm going to share with you the things that I've learned over 50 years that took me a long time. And the reason I mentor and the reason I share things, it's my hope to think that I've cried enough tears for many of you that maybe, just maybe, I have a few bits that I can share with you so you can go further than me. That is my ultimate goal. Please pass me and possibly turn around and teach me something I don't know. So let's start at the beginning. You have a lifestyle that many people think on the outside, bells, whistles, it's great. But inside, there's turmoil in the marriage. You've gone from best friends to addictions to lies to a complete farce. So the ultimate question, and it kind of choked up when I asked this of myself. I wrote a book called No Reserve because I'm in the auction business. So anytime I talk, I use a lot of metaphors within the auction world. No reserve in the auction world simply means when you go to sell something and you put a reserve on it, it means you won't take under a certain price. Like a $2 million house, but I won't take a dime under $1 million. That's a reserve, and you say, well, we're going to start at $1 million. The problem is nobody's coming because it tells them that you're afraid of taking a chance. Now look, there are chances that you don't want to take and chances you do want to take, and Sharon's hit on some great chances, and this is what I'm going to impart upon you. In my industry, if you came to me and said, I want to put $1 million reserve in my house, I'd say, that's great. Your neighbor's coming and the real estate agent wants your house. If you were to go absolute, meaning you no longer put any sort of reserve on it, everybody's coming because they all want to see if maybe there's just a chance at a deal. But once you get everyone in the room, what you actually invited in the room is opportunity. So with women, we tend to have certain reserves in our life. I'll get divorced when the kids are grown. I'll lose the weight after the last baby. Oh, I'll get a job after everybody's out of the house. In fact, I'll eat after I cook for everyone. Keep picking them. Reserves can go on and on and on, but if you're just working a job or just living a life that doesn't feel true to you every day, then you have put a reserve on not only yourself, but the value of yourself. And that's what I'm really here to talk about today. It's about the value of you. Because this last year, despite having written a book and the things I'm going to touch upon, that some of these lessons I learned and some were forced down my throat by a man upstairs. I'm going to tell you the last journey I took, which was a song that's a little dated for this audience probably, but it's a song by Charlene called I've Been to Paradise, but I've Never Been to Me. And that's a commonality with women. So let's talk about that. In my life, the first question I had to answer to find out the journey to me, can you leave a lie that you can see for a truth that you cannot, but you know it's pulling at you inside? And the answer to that question was yes. So I walked away from a multi-million-dollar lifestyle with a mattress, 2 kids, and the hopes that maybe I might land on my feet. I did anything and everything, and in 2008, in the midst of when that book of Sharon's changed my life, I was working 5 jobs and I made $21,064. I know because it's framed in my office. It took me about 2 years until I was paying that in taxes and more. But see, I was still concentrating on the money, not the woman inside. So a few things came along my way to actually wake me up. First and foremost, at the height of my career, when I was really on my way up, I was struck by a car while running on Thanksgiving morning, thrown 15 feet in the air, landed on my head and split my head open and suffered a traumatic brain injury. I suffered vertigo, tinnitus. I lost this eyesight in my right eye, the hearing in my right ear, and I developed seizures, 2 of them on stage, one at the Super Bowl and one at the Commonwealth Club of San Francisco. Not exactly ideal. But me being me, with 0 balance, 0 regard for any value in myself, I continue to push along and do what a lot of us women do. Be there for the kids, be there for my ex-husband, be there for my boyfriend, be there for my boss, be there for my colleagues, my friends, my dogs, and pretty much put me at the end of everything, even after a life-altering moment that said, hey, maybe you need to wake up a little. So maybe that's not enough. So I take these 8 months to kind of put myself back together, and then the father of my children puts a bullet through his head. And this is a man that had millions, that with no value of the self, constantly seeking to go for the next win, lost everything and dies without leaving a cent to his children. And now I have that on my plate. So I continue on, but once again, what I'm concentrating is not the value of myself. I'm concentrating on the outer income coming in from the physical income that I'm earning. See, I had this balance problem. There was no division between me and my company, and there certainly was no division between the wealth I felt of myself and the wealth I brought in. And that is an imperative change that has to happen. So I'm going to break this down for you, get completely raw about what I did wrong, and teach you what you might be able to do right. Because that's how I learned. I did it wrong. And I'm here to tell you that. So what did I do wrong? Let's talk about that lack of balance and lack of actually taking care of myself. I had no balance because I thought if you figured out that I had a brain injury or I wasn't maybe up to snuff or I had vertigo on a stage, that somehow my clients would know. And since there was no division between me and my company, then you would assume there was something wrong with my company. Because remember, I don't have value in myself. I've placed it all in my company. So that was my first mistake. But what happened is when you have vertigo, a very wise man once said to me, in that accident, Letitia, if you could sum it up in what word, what was taken from you? And I said, well, vertigo, means I have no balance. Well, did you ever have any in your life? No. And the primary person I had no balance with was myself. I didn't know how to say no to people, my mentees. I didn't know how to say no to anyone that asked me to do anything. And I certainly didn't know how to say no to myself. And we'll dive into that a little bit more when it's the truth of how you find inner value. So the next thing that I had to figure out when you're down to nothing, I fell back in love. I found what I thought, again, was my sense of value, ignored all the things that I had learned, and went heading back up that mountain, the monetary mountain, with little regard for myself. And then what should have been my stepson died by suicide. And again, we come crumbling down, back to nothing. But you see, I've learned something. Every time you're down to nothing, God is up to something. And for some of his children like myself that are pretty stubborn, it's going to take more than one hit to the head to wake me up. And I don't want that for you. So let's talk about inner value. So the first thing that I learned on an exterior way to get inner value was by helping another. See, I'm actually a serial mentor. I think I'm up to 65 people, predominantly women. But there's a couple of things I learned. Even when I had nothing, I mentored people at Circle K. I mentored people that wanted to be auctioneers. I mentored people out of divorces. Because I found that when I was giving to them, something important happened to me. There's nothing like volunteering for a child that has cancer or a woman that's been in a domestic violence shelter, because that's part of my job, is to do that for my clients. But when they look at you at the end of the day and they say, thank you, you really made a difference. It's almost like the Grinch when his heart starts beating again, your sense of value comes up. So the first thing I want to impart on you today is that your value lies in another. Predominantly as women, truthfully, she holds the key to you. So if you don't have money, that's a mistake that a lot of people say, well, I'll give when I have money. There's your reserve. No, you have time, talent, knowledge, and sometimes just a compassionate ear. Giving is the key to giving your own sense of self a boost. But we can go a little further than that. There's also an idea that I have is that, no offense to Sheryl Sandberg, I know she's a great female leader, but she wrote a book called Leaning In. I actually like to say reach out. If you come to my house for dinner with my kids, you're going to see a cornucopia of food of orange and red and yellow and different meats and vegetables and sometimes fruits. If you're looking around the circle of people that are feeding your soul and everybody looks like you, talks like you, sounds like you, and smells like you, then you are not feeding your soul. I found in reaching out to one woman that worked at Circle K, another woman that was a bathroom attendant at one of a good steakhouse, that we had more in common than probably any person I'd met at any PTA meeting, any line at my school, or anyone at that country club, that's for sure. Because for one, I was now on the poverty line, and nobody that I actually knew from those lives actually cared where I was now. But those women, they were single moms, they had vision, they had dreams, they had passion, and they knew how to take care of themselves in the process. So reach out. Particularly in this time today, look at where we are in civil unrest, look at where we are in financial uncertainty, health uncertainty. Reach out. Look out to other people that don't necessarily just in the exact position or exact shape, smell, anything that you're in, because this is the one thing about COVID. It has leveled the playing field. I know people of every demographic, every race, every creed, every religion, and certainly every profession that has been hit around the world in this time. So it's a beautiful time for you to reach out to people you may not think hold the answer to you. And by giving, you can certainly bring up your sense of self. Well, let's go a little further. This is something I actually haven't talked about anywhere here before, because it's the last journey of the last year of my life. So if you buy the book, that was all from about 2008 straight up to about 2 years ago. And a lot of it is in there, and I certainly wrote a roadmap on the things that I learned along the way, along with exercises. But here's where I am today. Because those of you that have ever tried to publish a book, it's a lot like movies when you see actors start talking about the things that they acted in. Well, they probably filmed it 2 years ago. So I once said to my kids about a month ago, I go, great, we're in the second book. So let's talk about what I've learned today, because it's really about you. See, no matter what I learned through all of that, I still had no value of self. When I mentored those women, there was a commonality that a lot of them said to me. They all said, oh, well, you know what? I knew it was going to be okay. See, the second that Letitia Frye believed in me, I knew I was going to be okay, and something happened. Everything changed. Well, the truth is that's completely wrong. What happened is they started to believe in themselves. See, ever since we're kids, we're told it only takes one to believe in you to make the change. But what no one told you is you're the one. It's you. And so how do you do that? How do you start believing in you? Well, I'm going to tell you how I did it. Because when the world is in complete chaos, and somehow you look at someone that has a continence of calm and peace and tranquility, it's because what's going on inside does not reflect what's going on outside in the world. That's why you can look at some people, actors, very wealthy sports figures, where everything on the outside seems as if it should be tranquil, and they're in nothing but trouble constantly, because the turmoil lies within. So let's get to how I learned about myself. So when I was helping these other women and some men, and they would all say that to me, and I'd say, well, it's really about the journey to you. Here's what happened to me, and I was this person, so you might be this person now. I'm going to bring up the G word. I'm going to bring up God, because here's what happened to me. I don't care if you're Jewish, Buddhist, Catholic, anything. It's not about religion that I'm talking about, and Sharon touched lightly upon faith. What I'm talking about is a relationship to self, as you know it, for me, became a relationship about God. Not a set of dogmas, not a set of practices, a true working relationship. How? Because when those women said to me, well, when you believed in me, the shift happened. And I've never once mentored anyone and asked them to lose weight or become a better mother or a better wife or any of that. I've taught them how to be a better businesswoman. I've taught them how to actually go into monetary success. But somehow they all did. Every time they'd all show up, I'm like, what, did everyone go to the same Weight Watchers group? Because what happened was once somebody believes in you and that inner sense of yourself wakes up, you don't really want to treat yourself that badly in every area of your life, including financial decisions, including marital decisions, all of it. You don't want to eat wrong. You don't want to drink too much. You don't want to take the medications you don't need. And I'm going to explain why. Because when you finally realize that you're worth something, why would you want to throw that away? And no amount of money you throw at that, if you don't have that, is going to matter. And if it takes throwing money at you to have that, then it can be taken away. And if somebody knows that, well, then you just exposed your weak spot. So let's talk about how you get that inner peace. Here's what happened to me. If you look through the trajectory of my life, and I'm sorry, there'll be a tear in this one, and you look at being hit by a car and surviving it, you look at having to clean up the man that I loved beyond words when he shot himself. You look at the death of a child that I was willing to take my own, and subsequently, due to grief, the man that I lost because of it. You take all those things, and it can really lead to a lack of a sense of self, a lack of a belief in myself. But if you look at those trajectories, how am I still here? Someone must have loved me so much that I'm still here. And when I finally figured that out, why would I want to hurt me? If someone up there, you can call it source, you can call it God, but somebody loves you. What I learned is if they think I'm worth it, if that's it, then I must be. So maybe it's time I do what we call self-care or self-love. What is the value of me? Because I'll tell you what, who's standing in my way? It's me. If I'm having wine 7 nights a week because I'm stressed out and it's COVID, then I am my own problem. If Ambien is what I have to take to sleep every time I'm on a plane, and I was on a plane 113 events, probably 250 days of the year, then I am my own problem. If when I look in the mirror, I don't know what I'm looking at, but I'm looking to a man or to a job or to a colleague to complete me, then I am my own problem. And one of the greatest things that you can actually learn is that not only are you your own problem, you're actually your own answer. And how? I had to calm down, I had to slow down, I had to find balance, set priorities, and I had to hold myself accountable. Why? Because I finally figured out I'm worth it. Because someone up there loved me enough to bring me through all of that to get me here with you. And the very least I can do is take care of me. So right now, I'm going to be honest. I'm already writing a second book, and you know what I call it? Fair market value. Because in my line of work, when people want to know, hey, what's it going to sell for? You say, well, fair market value. What is that? Fair market value is what the last person paid for it. In fact, if you have an item that's been sold over and over and over, it fluctuates a lot. So if you come into this world in a perfect state of love, because you do, and every single relationship from a parent to a best friend, to a coach, to a teacher, to a colleague, to a wife, to a husband, is based upon how they treated you, particularly for women, is how you will view yourself. It is your fair market value based on how the last person treated you. And therein lies the rub. Because what happens often is you wonder, why do I keep going back to the same place? For me, despite how much money I make or how much success I had, why do I continually spend it wrong? Why do I continually need to have financial health and literacy? Because the problem isn't the money, the problem is me. So what can I do about that? Well, it's exactly what I just said. It's about understanding and learning that I have to understand when I look in the mirror, it's me that has to say, I'll be there for you. It's me that has to say, I used to say this, I just want to date someone that said, when the ship is going down, the plane's going down, I'm just going to put my arm around you and tell you it's all going to be okay. But what if you're alone? Is it going to be okay? It's going to be up to you to say, I love you. It's going to be up to you to mean it. It's going to be up to you to say, I've got your back and I'm not going anywhere. And when you can figure that out, then you're actually going to have a value that no amount of money, no pandemic, no upheaval, no divorce can take from you. So how do we do it? There's something I call SOS. You see, in the old days, that was standing for, a lot of people thought save our ships. It actually means save our souls. Because what we're talking about really here is knowing yourself at the soul level. So there's a lot of things in life. For me, it's running, my dogs. Sometimes when people are really depressed, it could be looking at kittens or puppies. It really doesn't matter. It could be the favorite song, but it's something that does not require any thought when you're getting down in that funk to go directly to, because you know it'll bring you back to center. Because it's all about getting back to center. So SOS, identify them. Who are they? What are they? Where are they? And how easy is it for you to get to them? Because it's the same thing with giving. You're not going to be in the midst of a traumatic brain injury and say, I think I'll start volunteering for kids with cancer now. No, these are practices you want to put in place ahead of time. It's like what Sharon said. It's what so many of the women here today talked about. Inside of you lie these gifts, and inside of you is the opportunity for this relationship. Don't wait to get hit by a car. Don't wait to lose all of your loved ones to figure out what that is. Because the greatest loss in wealth that this world will have is if you go to your grave without sharing everything that you were with us. And it's going to take you getting to know you to understand that. How? Reach out, help. A very wise mentor, Foster Fries, once told me as he and his wife Lynn were giggling and giving away money, that he whispered to me and said, it's not our money. And I thought he was crazy. And what he meant was he'd been blessed by God financially. And he felt it was his job to give it away. He asked me what I had. Well, I was broke, trying to feed my kids. I had talent. So I started mentoring women in my industry and beyond free of charge, because that's not my gift. Get hit by a car, you can lose it in a minute. That's what God gave me. So I started to share it freely, and inside my sense of value came up. I learned my SOSs, my sources of strength to bring me back to center when I'm out. And most importantly, I found that the last few people and the way they treated me is not my fair market value. It is on the relationship I create within. So please understand that while there is so much joy in the world and so many chances for you to become successful, there will be challenges and it will be difficult, but the journey to you is the greatest wealth you can ever have. And it will be hard, but it will be worth it. I promise you. And the good thing about a relationship means it's never ending. It's not about just a set of practices. It means you check in every day. You stand and ask yourself, what am I doing to stand in my way? And how could I be better to me? Because somebody loves me. And if you're anything like me, I grew up dysfunctional. I had unsuccessful marriage and very many tragedies that hit me. It took me a long time to understand that that kind of love exists. And it does. So I hope you find it, but most importantly today, you've been given tremendous practices on whether you're in a complete joyous state of your life or you're going through upheaval. Either way, the best way to success, the best way to wealth, maintaining it and keeping it and not actually losing it, is by having it come from within. I hope this has been of some help for you. I think it's time now to go to a little Q&A, but most importantly, in the midst of COVID, in the midst of the civil unrest out there, remember, start with you. Be kind to yourself, keep your word to yourself, especially women. We give our word to a lot of people, your dogs, your kids, your spouse, your boss. How about your word to you? Some time for you, some honest reflection, some changes, and creating value from within. Thank you. It's been my pleasure, and I'm Letitia Frye.